Hi, I'm Bob, and I'm here to help you install your windshield today. This is the SS30 quick release mount system. We came out with this system in 2015, and we use it on all of our SS30 series windshields, which include the SS30 Custom Classic, the SS32 Falcon, and the SS34 Phantom. Included in the kit, we've got the long strap, we got the right and left short straps, we got the 2 pivot brackets, we got the 2 male fork tube clamps, we got the 2 female fork tube clamps, we got 2 thick gaskets, 2 thin gaskets, we have 4 quick release knobs, we have 4 shoulder nuts, we have 4 rubber washers, we have 8 7/8 inch bolts, we have 1 3/4 inch bolt, we have 5 acorn nuts and 5 flat washers. Okay, it's time to start shield installation. We start off by putting the long strap on the front. But before we do, I want to number the holes just to make the ease of installation easier for you when you read it on the instruction sheet. The hole is set up as hole number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. At the present time, we're going to take the long strap, we're going to line it up with hole number 2, we're going to take the 3/4 inch bolt, and we're going to put it through the front, and we're going to fix it on the back with a flat washer and an acorn nut. Do not tighten at this time. So now we'll take the short strap, we'll put it on the front, we'll put one of the 7/8 inch bolts through the short strap, through the long strap, and through the rubber grommet. We'll do the same thing with the bottom hole. And then again on the other side. Now that you got the strap on the front, you turn the shield around and you align the pivot bracket with the little L on the pivot bracket pointing towards the center of the shield. You'll put an acorn nut on to tighten the pivot bracket on, but do not over tighten at this time. Just get it started. You'll do the same thing with the other pivot bracket. Again, making sure that the short end is pointing towards the center of the shield. Now that the pivot brackets are on, we'll just set aside the shield until installation later. Now let's go over and put on the fork tube brackets. As you all know, all bikes are unique. They have different front ends for each bike. Our standard fork setup fits 35 to 41 millimeter straight forks. Our oversized setup fits 45 to 54 millimeter straight forks. Then we make our tapered setup to fit a tapered fork, which is quite popular on the Kawasaki Vulcan series, the Honda Shadow series, and the Yamaha V-Star series. They measure at the top 2 1/8 in diameter, and at the bottom of the taper, it's 2 5/8. Now for this one here, it's an oversized setup. And so what we'll be doing is we'll be using our oversized clamp setup with the wide glide front end glass. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put the rubber spacer around the fork tube. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have a thick and a thin spacer. For this application with the oversized fork, we'll be using the thin spacer. You wrap it around the fork tube. In this case, I'm going to put it about 3/4 of an inch from the top. Now, one tip to use to keep it in place is maybe just get a little duct tape to hold it in place while we're putting on the fork tube clamp. Okay, once the rubber is put into place, we can now take the clamp and putting the female clamp on the back side with the slots and the male clamp with the hooks on the side. Remember, the flat side of the clamp should be on the outside of the fork tube. The clamp interlocks behind the fork tube and pulls together in the front. Because I mentioned all fork tubes are a little bit different, so there's a good chance the holes aren't going to line up when you pull it together because of air in the clamp and just because of the different fork widths and diameters. So in this situation, I suggest taking a Phillips head screwdriver, putting it through the center hole, and giving it a little crank to get it in place, to reline them up. Now, metal has a memory. So what I suggest for some people, and especially with the tapered, is once you get it lined up, to put a bolt through and tighten it all the way up, and then let it sit for about 10 to 15 minutes. Once that's done, you can unloosen everything, and the metal should have its memory set, so it'll be much easier for the installation. but in this situation, we're not going to do that. We'll just crank it up. Once it's cranked up, you'll put the top bolt through, and you'll take the shoulder nut and screw it with the shoulder facing away from the center of the bike. You'll repeat that process on the bottom. Now the center holes, in this case, will not be used. They're for a different setup. So once those are put in place, then you put the rubber washer on the outside to protect. Now that we got this clamp done on this side, it's time to go over and do the same thing on the other side. So at this point, we'll set up the clamps so that the outside of the thing is parallel with the outside of the forks. Now that we've got the clamps parallel with the outside of the fork, it's time to tighten up the bolts. So in this case, we'll start with the top one here, put a wrench behind there, just tighten it all the way up till you can't put it anymore. Then do the bottom one. Then on the other side, do the same thing. At this point, it's time to put the windshield onto the fork brackets. On the pivot brackets, we've got different adjustment points. So for this purpose, we're going to start with adjustment point number 1 in the lowest, farthest, closest to the windshield lowest point. Once that's hooked on, we're going to put one of the quick release tightening knobs on there just to hold it in place. We'll do the same thing on this side. Now that the shield's in place, we're going to start tightening and adjusting. We're going to start tightening first by doing the front 5 bolts on the shield. We do that first by aligning the back pivot bracket with the front short strap. Pull it into place, then tighten the bolt. Okay, now those are all tightened. So what we need to do then is make sure that the shield is centered around the headlight, which it is. If it's not, this is the time to make adjustments with the fork clamps, either in or out, to make sure that there is an equal spacing. The new quick release pivot bracket's been designed so that you've got full adjustability for angle of the shield. We've got 10 different positions that are set up. The first position setup starts on the lower, closest notch to the windshield. From that position, you got 5 adjoining points in which you can change the pivot. Make sure to only use the lower pivot point A or the upper pivot point 5, or you could damage your mounting hardware. Pivot point A works with pivot points 1 through 5, and pivot point 5 works with pivot points A through 9. What this basically accomplishes is it pushes the shield 2 inches farther away from the rider to avoid any speedo tack interference. Okay, now that everything's been arranged, aligned, and tightened, it's time to ride. But before you go, I want to explain just a little preventive maintenance. Because this is a quick release system and because it is a vibrating motorcycle, fasteners can loosen over time. So be sure whenever you fill your tank of gas, just to double check the knobs, make sure they're tight. If they tend to loosen, you can use a little Loctite or some other thread lock formula just to make sure they stay in place. Have a good time. Enjoy the ride. Hi, after your shield's all on, you're out riding, get a few bugs on it, you can clean it all up with the Slipstreamer motorcycle windshield cleaner polish. And remember, it's just as important on what you wipe it off with. Only use 100% cotton cloth or a microfiber towel. I tell you what we use here in the shop, baby diapers. Nothing works better.